Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about Father of the Bride. It's a romantic comedy that came out in 2022 based on a series of movies by the same name that were first released in 1991. I'm going to ask you a question. Have you ever been stuck in the past, unable to escape while fearing the inevitable curveballs life won't stop throwing at you? If you agree with this statement and you've ever felt that way, this film just might be the one for you. And it starts with one character who is Billy Herrera. Billy is pretty much this man who comes over from Cuba and he lives in Miami and he meets the love of his life, Ingrid. They get married right away and we get to see a cute little montage of the past. So that's like a little flashback moment. But then is in the present, told from Billy's perspective, showing that he is in couples therapy with his wife Ingrid and things are falling apart. We learn about the family dynamic between husband and wife, but then we also see that they have two beautiful girls who are all grown up, one of them being Sophie and the other being Cora. Just to summarize it, Sophie is seen as the absolute favorite child. However, Cora is not seen the same way through her parents' eyes.
Oh.
Soph?
Wrong daughter. Thought you'd be more like your sister.
That's my ringtone.
The premise of the movie is Sophie brings home a fiancé. So some questions pop into the audience's head from here. What is Sophie's fiancé like? We aren't even exposed to what he looks like until he walks through the front door and meets her parents. Is he going to fit into the family? And if he doesn't, what conflicts will arise? All of these questions unfold throughout the film, and I am going to deep dive into the answers. After watching the movie, I've read a lot of reviews online about it. There seems to be a general consensus that it could have been better. I've seen a lot of comments about how the movie grew stale over time with its repetition and predictable tropes. People may have thought the film writers were trying to nail a certain point into the audience's head too frequently and blatantly that it actually got kind of annoying.
Stop this, okay? I didn't come across the Atlantic Ocean to sleep on Theo Walter's floor, to put myself through school, to build a firm so I can afford something like this. For you to stand there and tell me I can't celebrate this extraordinary moment with our family, our friends.
Dan, this is about us.
I recently played this video game called Until Dawn, and there was this thing called the butterfly effect, which is one thing leads to another. It's kind of like when you throw a rock into a pond and it makes the ripple effect. So if you think about it like that, it does kind of get slightly annoying when it's always in your face every 5 seconds in the game. So obviously this is different, and in cinema, it is tricky. Honestly, it's tricky to get around because you want to explain your point, you have limited time to do it while introducing the characters and their emotions and why you should care about them, like we stated earlier. I am a journalism and communications major, but I am learning about this. I am learning about film. I don't know everything. I don't know how the filmmakers could have displayed their point in a more efficient way. Saying that though, if the target audience did not appreciate the way that this was executed, I personally feel like the directors probably missed their mark and, like I said, could have expressed it in a better way. But I can also see that the main story is not revolving around the parents, or at least they aren't meant to be under all the spotlight. I'd say the main conflict of the story is between Sophie and her father, as he is the one against her marriage and life plans for a large portion of the film. At first, Sophie is presented to be more important than her sister and more successful because she went to college and is a lawyer. I do believe that this kind of dynamic is very real and present in a lot of families, and oftentimes parents, whether they are immigrants or not, will put the pressure on their children to attend college. This of course is due to societal ideology and the ideas of finding success, what it is, what it means, and how it can be created. I'd say a lot of parents want to make their children's lives better than theirs were, and that is something that can be looked up to, right? And I don't know, if you're going into this movie but you don't expect it to talk about the Cuban experience, then you're probably not watching the right movie for you. Just a little bit of history because I find this important. There's been a steady influx of Cubans into the United States since the triumph of Fidel Castro's revolution in 1959. Billy Herrera keeps bringing up his traumatic past throughout the movie, and even in his speech he gave at Sophie's wedding. This right here is meant to be comedy because even the characters roll their eyes. It's meant to depict Billy's traditional views of moving to America and acknowledge his hard work in getting there. This is something that may be appreciated by movie watchers of Cuban descent because it offers a a look into a story that's often not told. Fidel Castro called them gusanos, which means worms, escoria, trash, and more recently, the Miami Mafia. Of all the aspects of the Cuban Revolution, none has had a greater impact on America than the immigration of over 1 million Cubans to the United States. Settling mostly in Miami, but also elsewhere, Cuban Americans have created a wealthy, successful, politically influential immigrant society. This rendition of Father of the Bride has faced some criticism by viewers about how it isn't as good as the original, and in cinema, this is oftentimes the case, because why change something that is not broken? But I enjoy the fact that this rendition gave insight to multiple cultures. I don't think that Billy needed to impose his past values on his children, but I can understand why he did it, and I think a lot of parents do that. This movie jumps into the idea of differing generational values being expected between parents and their children, no matter what generation they are a part of. This is seen historically, in the present day, and will probably happen in the future whether we like it or not. So it seems to be a reoccurring trend that the younger generation somehow looks down on the older generation and vice versa. For example, Gen Z thinking about boomers as being very slow and inflexible to new things. Things such as AI, pop culture, music, film, and more. This is a theme that does show up in the movie, and I do think it's important because it's something that will always be talked about. I'm not here to say one thing or the other. Everyone is entitled to their own opinions about generational differences, no matter what they are, and that's your business, right? But I do think that when looking at our parents and our grandparents, they've seen things that we never have and never will. Just like us. We've seen things and gone through things that are totally new. They've never experienced it. So kind of like when your parents are saying to you, well, when I was in college, I had to do da-da-da-da-da. And you're like, well, that's all well and good, but irrelevant to me. I don't care. Or, yeah, I get it. But it's still important nonetheless, okay? So that's just something to think about. That's just something to stew on. But it's not necessarily something that needs to be stewed on because life just keeps on going. We keep it pushing. Getting back on track with the film itself, I'd say I appreciated the cultural differences between Adan being of Mexican descent and Sophie being Cuban. And I like how the characters were able to find similarities by the end of the movie. One of the scenes towards the end of the movie is actually of Adan's father, and he's ordering a bunch of Mexican cigars, right? But then Billy, being of Cuban descent, is like, no. And he shares a Cuban cigar with him later, which is just a really comical and cute way of sharing culture. So I want to veer this in a different direction now. There was another character that I haven't said anything about yet, and that is wedding planner Natalie Vance. Who is Natalie? She's an Instagram influencer, and a lot of people might have seen her as either the funniest one there in the movie or the most disrespectful, worst character. There's pretty much no in between. When I was first introduced to Natalie, I didn't know how I felt about her. I thought she's kind of irritating, and what is this doing? This is making the movie kind of tacky. At the end, I saw that she had a lot of character growth. Arguably, she was one of the characters who had the most growth, and I thought that was really beautiful. Also, her opinions at the beginning of working with the family, yes, they were stereotypical. Yes, they were a bit out of pocket, but towards the end, I could see that she was really trying to understand, and she genuinely did want to help. She was also going through things, and everyone was super understanding, both sides. Other than Billy at first, who's kind of like, who are you? Why are you in my house? But that just made this whole thing really tie together because it just shows the generational differences once again with Instagram, social media, and all that. Overall, I like how the family kind of grew together and the dynamic was okay. I didn't have a problem with it. Some people in the reviews of the movie did have a problem with it, but at the end of the day, this is not that deep. Like, this is not a serious movie, and this remake in a way had a lot of changes, so I don't know if I would really compare it to the first Father of the Bride. This remake was not supposed to be groundbreaking. I don't think that it was supposed to be a life-altering, question your entire existence and viewpoint, so I think that it was just a fun, relaxing, and lighthearted movie, and for that purpose, it did achieve the goal. Were there elements of emotion? Yes, I think so. Was it something that changed my worldview? Not necessarily. Was it something that made me more interested in learning about the cultures presented? I'd say yes. Was this movie relevant to when it came out in 2022, and can it still hold water? I would say yes. Lastly, another thing that I thought was really good about this movie was, even though it was brief, Sophie and Adan talked about how they were going to move to Mexico together for work. The father, Billy, was a little unsure of this, and he thought, okay, you're taking my girl away to your country. What are you doing? He thought that this wasn't fair. He thought that his daughter was just gonna head over there, and it was all because she was following her husband. But in reality, it was actually her idea, and it's something that she was super passionate about. She is a lawyer, and so is Aran. Sophie's character is strong. It is not budging. She knows what she wants. She knows what direction she takes. She follows her heart, and this shows up not only in her standing up for her marriage against her father at the beginning, but also in her career aspirations and wanting to work for people at the border between the United States and Mexico. She wanted to help. She loves doing what she does, and once again, that just shows how proud she is of her culture and her husband's culture. Sophie is seen fighting for what she believes in, and although she's butting heads with her father, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are completely different oppositional characters, because she actually did get that trait from him, arguably. He is also someone who fights what he believes in, even if sometimes one of them needs to change. And even though they're against each other throughout the film for a lot of it in their beliefs, when Sophie gets lost at one point, when everything's not going how she planned and she thought she was seeing a bunch of signs actually not to marry Aran, her father is the one who finds her, shows up for her, sits down with her, talks to her, even though he knows that she's mad at him. Her father shows up when he is needed. He was needed before in the film too, but hey, at least he's repairing his relationship now with her. What matters most is the end. So the big takeaway is that everything ended up how it should. Everything ended up being okay, even though the conflict arose and it finally settled down. Sophia and Cora's parents did figure out their relationship and where they stood with that at the end of the film. Everything was just brought together with a nice little bow and a cherry on top. So with that, that's gonna wrap up the video. I can't say I was blown out of the water by this movie. I'm not sure it'll have a long lasting impression on me for years to come, just because honestly rom-coms are not my favorite genre. But for everything that it was, I thought it was pretty good and I enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.